You're listening to the Telltale Channel. Don't forget to check me out on all social media: Patreon, Twitter, Teespring, and Etsy. All links can be found in the description or on my website, telltaleatheist.com. Hey, this is Owen. If you're comfortable, leave your first name and state at the sound of the tiny truck backing up.
Hello, this is Julio Peinado, and I'm from California. I have a question. Well, it's about the coronavirus, and I've been looking at the coronavirus, the epidemic, and the fear that people. I'm just looking for I'm looking at social media about people expressing their fears. Like, people have been acting like it's the end of the world, but in reality, there's nothing to really worry about. But I know you have to take precautions about coronavirus, and you should be prepared in order to avoid that infection, right? I still don't understand why people are so paranoid and so afraid of the pandemic. We've been through the more deadlier version of the pandemic, such as the flu, the flu, and the black plague, one of the most deadliest plagues of all.
Okay, so basically the question here, as I understand it, is why are people so concerned? Why are people so scared? And that's a really interesting question, actually. Something that I've noticed regarding this pandemic is the fact that in the best cases, we have seen the people who we have tested, the death rate is 0.7% in the best cases when people did contact tracing and wide-scale testing and things like that. Iceland actually tested their entire population and found that half of the infected people were asymptomatic, didn't even know they had it, weren't coughing or sneezing or any of that stuff. So why is this so scary? When I get a phone call from the school, when Kylie is sick, for example, they call me up and they tell me that she's sick, she's coughing, she's sneezing, whatever. But if she doesn't have a fever, historically, they said that she's not contagious and she can stay at school. That's not always the case. There are a lot of nuances there, but for the most part, that's kind of been the trend for viruses that are really common in my area of the country. You don't need a fever to be contagious with this. You don't need to be coughing or sneezing or anything. You don't even have to know that you have it. And you can still be contagious. You can still be spreading it around. And it's not just spread by coughing or sneezing on people necessarily. If you cough or sneeze at all, you are expelling basically virus particles into the air when you cough or sneeze, and they hang out in water droplets in the air for hours after you walk away. It is very, very contagious comparatively, compared to like other illnesses. And the mortality rate is very high comparatively, compared to other illnesses. So the fact that so many people are getting it is basically overwhelming the healthcare systems of the countries that are dealing with this right now. Like, just look at Italy, what's happening with Italy right now. Their healthcare systems are being overwhelmed, and instead of having a 0.7% mortality rate, which is high, but it's a lot lower than some other illnesses we've seen. Instead of seeing a 0.7% mortality rate, we're seeing 6%, 7%, 8% mortality rate because the people who need critical care can't get critical care because the healthcare system is so overloaded right now. That is why this is so scary. Even though the deaths are preventable, there are a lot of people who are still dying, despite the fact that they could have been saved if we had the manpower and the machinery that we need and things like that. There are these things called ECMO machines. ECMO is what it's called, I believe. And these ECMO machines basically oxygenate your blood. Just cut the lungs right out of the equation. They just oxygenate your blood. And the lungs have historically, with this illness, been the issue. So you'll get like fluid in your lungs. You won't be able to breathe. You'll get pneumonia and you'll die from it. But these ECMO machines just cut the lungs out of the equation and just oxygenate your blood directly for you. So no matter what, if you are hooked up to an ECMO machine, you will live through this illness. That's kind of the idea that people are looking at right now. We can prevent people from dying from this no matter what. It will not kill somebody if we don't want it to. But we don't have the ECMO machines for this. We don't have the ventilators that we need for this. How many people are there who are going to get this in the U.S.? Say it's going to be half the U.S. population that's going to get it. That's 330 million people in the U.S., right? So just have a nice round number. Half of that, let's say it's 165 million people have it. And best case scenario, say 0.7% death rate. That's still hundreds of thousands, millions of people. It's very, very scary. That's why people are concerned. But I truly have faith in our medical and scientific communities and educators. I have faith in them that they know what they're doing. They can solve problems, they can figure this out, and they can guide us through it. So I'm not terribly worried for myself or the country, really. We're going to have a rough go of it, but I have faith in the medical community that they are really good at what they do, and they can pull us through this. White privilege is objectively just a real thing. It's impossible to deny that white privilege is a thing. If you're white, then you have a better chance of getting jobs or doing this thing or that thing or anything else than you do if you're not white. That exists. Male privilege exists. All these things exist, right? But those are systemic measurements. White privilege and male privilege and all that other stuff. Those are systemic measurements. When you boil this down to an individual level, it's absurd. I mean, just look at me. I grew up in complete isolation for 4 years. Didn't have any friends or anything. Had an abusive parent. I had a really garbage life growing up. And I have had a lower chance of succeeding than an awful lot of people. I had a lower chance of succeeding in life than a lot of people have, especially considering the fact that I was a drug addict for a while, which I've talked about on my channel before. I have white privilege, but it's largely been counteracted and reversed by a lot of the stuff that I've gone through in my life. So applying male privilege or white privilege or whatever other type of privilege to individual persons, to just boiling it down to one individual person and saying, you have this, and so you have a better life than me, is absolutely absurd. It's completely absurd. And it's the same with the coronavirus. The mortality rate is a statistical anomaly. If I got it, I'm 30 years old, I'm reasonably healthy, I don't have any lung problems or anything like that, I would almost guaranteed make it through just fine. Even somebody with like diabetes and heart problems, over 85 and everything else, they have a better chance of coming through it alive than not. It is a statistical anomaly when somebody dies. It's just a really high statistical anomaly, and it's extremely significant when we're dealing with hundreds of millions of people. And a healthcare system is not set up for this at all. One death is too many. So it's not something that you have to worry about dying from personally, but if you go out of your house and just hang out and do whatever, eat, go out to eat, go to the beach, whatever, and you happen to have it, or you get it, you risk spreading it to tens of people, hundreds of people, thousands of other people, and their blood is on your hands. So be so extremely careful, because you could be responsible for the deaths of an awful lot of people if you aren't very, very careful. It is something very serious, something to take very seriously. Do not play around with this.